And you are welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5 today. This is the Saturday panel as we pick out some of the best sporting books of 2025 and make recommendations for your Christmas shopping with one of Ireland's top sports writers, Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times. Malachy, great to see you again. How is the form?
Form is great. You're very kind, John. Thank you for that.
You find it quite therapeutic to get a cup of tea and have a chocolate bar or a biscuit and get lost in a sports book in this age where everybody's addicted to their smartphone.
Indeed.
There's something soothingly unique about it.
It's great, yeah, and it's something that I've always been into, and I've somehow sort of shoehorned myself into doing this every year in the Irish Times and then on various sort of radio stations and podcasts. And so I find myself in sort of late kind of July when the gas season finishes going, right, I must start reading these books now. And, some years it's work. And other years it's like there's always 2 or 3 standouts. I would say this year there's an unnaturally high level of standout books. I think it's a very, very good year for sports books on such an incredibly wide spectrum. There are books, and we'll get into all of them, there are books that are, old-timey American sports writery books, which are, a particular favourite of mine. And then there is like the DJ Carey book, which is a really brilliant, forensic and precise picking apart of like the great sporting scandal, or the great scandal of our age, or one of the great scandals of our age. And there's like there's a brilliant prison book. Boris Becker's time in prison is incredible. There's a brilliant rugby book, like the Brendan Fanning's rugby book is amazing for, just a snapshot of the time that we're in right now. So there's a brilliant range of them this year, and they've been, it wasn't work this year to read them. It was a really enjoyable exercise this year.
Are we in a place where maybe the books that might be criticised from a sporting perspective, the bland, formulaic biographies, are going out of fashion because people are copping onto them?
I suspect so, to some extent. Like, they're still there to an extent. Andy Farrell's book is fine. It's an interesting story. But, like, it doesn't compare in terms of, like, the really deep examination that some of the other books are, that say the Mike Tyson book is. Now, the Mike Tyson book isn't an autobiography, it's a biography, and it's a biography of a time in his life. Andy Farrell's book is, like, it's fine. I'm not saying it's bad. Andrew Porter's is probably of the 3 sort of main. There's Andrew Porter, Conor Murray, and Andy Farrell are the 3 big sort of sporting autobiographies this year. They're sort of by coincidence all rugby books. I say Andrew Porter's is probably the best of them because so much of it isn't about rugby. Like, so much of it is about his eating disorder and his grief over his mum dying and his ADHD and stuff like that. So the thing is, a book is good when it has a story to tell. Andy Farrell's story isn't completely written yet.
No. We could win the World Cup in 2027.
Absolutely. Now, look, like, some of the most interesting parts of Andy Farrell's book was the rugby league stuff. The Wigan stuff, which I kind of remember as a kid a little bit. And that's sort of fascinating. And, like, his story is kind of fascinating. But books are better when they're a self-contained story. When you take something like Kieran Murphy taking up hurling.
He was in here yesterday with Owen.
I saw him.
Peace in our time.
Peace in our time. The guns fell silent and Murph found his way back in here. But his is a self-contained story of taking up hurling at the age of 41. That's an elevator pitch for a story. Boris Becker spending 280 days in prison. That's an elevator pitch for a story. I think the sort of sprawling life stories are just, in general, they've become kind of formulaic. Unless they're dealing with a specific element, they're 6 out of 10 books, whereas some of the ones we're going to talk about are 8, 9, 10 out of 10 books.
Let's get into them in more detail, Malachy. So I finished The Dodger last night. Eamonn, who's a journalist down in Kilkenny, Carlow. And I just thought, this is insane. This story is
Isn't it?
insane. Let's just go through the facts here. So Emer weaves the story of DJ's life well. So the decorator career with Kilkenny, 5 All-Ireland titles, and then it all begins to descend. You've got the kind of the harmless exaggerations at start, and then it just slides into criminal, dark behaviour, duping people out of money by pretending to have cancer. What he took, 400,000 almost from 22 people, and that's only what's on the record.
Exactly.
And a 5.5-year prison sentence for the most famous hurler in the country of the last 30, 40 years. The stories made me sick, and I know we take great joy from what sports people do, but perhaps, and I know you've written about this in the Times, the exceptionalism around it can be misplaced.
Oh, big time, yeah. And it's, I think at times, because the DJ story sort of happened in a kind of a drip feed, in the way Ireland being such a small country that these stories tend to, you know, that there were rumours and then there was an arrest and then nobody could say anything publicly because he was even a prominent GAA star rather than DJ Carey, you know. And then there was, he pled guilty, and so his name could come out then, and there could be, it was a drip effect over the space of maybe half a decade, give or take. And because it was also sort of elongated, I still think that a lot of it has kind of washed over people's heads to a certain extent. In that he pled guilty, so there was no trial. So there was no evidence really given in court. What there was the day of the victim impact statements. The Friday, he had his sentencing happened over 2 days. One was on a Friday and the other was on the Monday. I was actually there on the Monday. I was off on the Friday, but I read Miriam Lord's brilliant piece in the Irish Times where she basically laid out that the atmosphere changed in the court when the victim impact statements came out, and it was explained exactly what this guy's modus operandi was. And that was still only a very small snapshot, right? This book, if the sort of particulars of the DJ case, I think everybody knows that he made up the fact that he had cancer to get money out of people. And he's gone to jail for 5.5 years. But if you sit down and read this account, where Eamonn Sweeney goes to the victims, and some of whom got their money back in the end, and some of those, one of those stories in it, Mag Kerwin's story in it is like, it's fantastic actually, because she basically goes, she has a bet with somebody. She rings up Willie O'Connor, former teammate of DJ's, and says, "This fella, I'm getting my money back off this fella," and like, she has a bet with some guy, in fact, saying, and he'd go, "Well, good luck to you now."
And she had cancer.
That was the thing. And so she was so outraged at the fact that this guy was going around telling people. So look, these stories are in the book, and that's why my way of thinking about this book is that it has done a kind of a service that even some of the documentary, and there was a 2-part documentary on RTE. There was a very good documentary on Primetime. Primetime handed over a whole show to it. And they're all very good. And yet there's something about the written word. There's something about as you're sitting down and you're reading through it and you go, hang on, what? And you kind of flick back a page and go, Jesus Christ.
It's the relentlessness of it for me.
That's the thing.
The relentless predatory behaviour.
Yeah. And predatory is the word. That's the thing. Because I still think that there's this notion among some people that he goes, sure, DJ, he was always a kind of a tragic case.
This Walter Mitty thing.
Walter Mitty, exactly.
Walter Mitty's an innocence, kind of a bumbling...
fantasist.
Yeah, no, this is criminality. This is dark stuff.
And, they put it down to, sure, he was always bad with money, and sure, didn't he have the thing with AIB, and he could never, he just couldn't handle his... No, it wasn't that, It was that he sized up his victims, went after them, got what he could out of them, and then, brazened it out and the neck of them. So, look, it's an astonishing book, and I think actually it's something that people will come back to in years to come, and read it again and again.
I'd be a believer in second chances in life, and we all make mistakes. We're all human, but it's hard to see a redemption arc here now with this.
It's kind of impossible, really. Until he comes out, and if he chooses to, he may just choose to live a life of solitude. He may leave the country, I don't know, or he may choose to come out and try and tell his story and try and explain himself. Because that was I was there the day he was sentenced. I'd say I was standing 3 feet from him when the sentence was handed down. He was behind the glass, and I was the closest one to the glass. And one of the things the judge said was that we don't know why he did this. We don't know what his motivation was. And I think until he eventually, if he ever does, come out and explain his motivation and explain what it was all about, I think that's maybe his only redemption possibility, but God knows, it's going to be a while till we hear from him anyway.
What was his expression?
Just deadened, really.
Okay.
He was just old and grey, and he had his hands clasped in front of him. It was very interesting, actually, because he was standing there for the judge's summation, lasted about 9.5 minutes. He didn't really change his expression all the way through. You could see that he knew that everybody was looking at him, that the whole of the court was looking at him rather than at the judge, waiting for some sort of reaction, and there was none. I remember writing in my notes that he blinked a bit more quickly when the 5.5 years was announced, but that might have even been me reaching, for an expression, But no, there was no expression all the way.
That is far from the steps of the Hogan stand.
Big time.
So he's in prison.
Yeah.
Two men who were in prison, as you touched upon at the start, are Mike Tyson and Boris Becker. Baddest Man, The Making of Mike Tyson, Mark Kriegel.
Yeah. About
Mike Tyson's early upbringing. This was maybe feral at ground zero, his upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an astonishing book. I love these kind of American books. America does these books incredibly well. There's a great Ali book by Jonathan Eig a couple of years ago, and there's a great Tiger Woods book by Armin Catane, and I always forget who his co-author was. But anyway, they take these lives that have been documented to within an inch of their life, and so they basically take all the strands of their life and stitch them into one narrative. This is the story of Mike Tyson from up until the night he wins the world title for the first time, when he beats Michael Spinks in 1988. So this book ends when he's 21 years old. He's literally only lived 1/3 of his life in this book, and yet it's just astonishing. It tells the story of him coming from the streets, how he was basically absolutely headed for a life of crime and prison, and presumably a very short life, until he started boxing. And the narrative arc around Tyson was always that there was this guy, this trainer, Customato, took him off the streets, saved his life, was his white knight, and some of that is true. The bare bones of what happened is you can say that, but the idea of Customato is this angelic hero riding in to save this street kid. It's not 100%. It's probably not even 90, 80, 70%. As this book shows, Cuss got his as well. It wasn't a completely altruistic act, that even when Tyson was sort of 14, 15, Cuss was kind of selling off parts of Tyson's future to shady enough characters at the same time. He was, there's a guy called Teddy Atlas who his name may ring a bell with people, was part of Tyson's sort of inner circle, was his sort of protector and trainer, Cuss's understudy for quite a while. And he and Tyson had a big fight at one stage, a big falling out. and to keep it quiet because offered Atlas, a percentage of Tyson's future earnings just to go away and keep quiet. Now, Atlas was, kind of outraged and offended by even being offered this and told him how to fuck off and just left and got out of his life. But there's loads of this in it, and there's loads of, like, Donald Trump is in this, Don King is in this.
It's the 80s.
It's the 80s, and it's America, and it's the amount of shakedown artists that surround Tyson all the way through, and how he finds his way through all of that. And, like, it's warts and all, Tyson is...
Is it not a surprise then that it all unravelled with Buster Douglas and Tokyo, and then obviously the conviction for rape and everything?
You can see, like everything is foreshadowed here, even if you didn't know how it all played out, you would read this book. If this book was a novel, you would go, well, the sequel to this, there's no happy ending, and so but the thing with the book is that even if it was just that story told straight, it'd be an amazing book. Mark Kriegel inserts himself into it. It's written in like real kind of old hard-boiled prose, like it's written with real sort of style and real kind of, like, he really goes for it, and it doesn't always work. Some of it you kind of go, like there's a lot of stuff in it about, old-timey New York writers like Pete Hamill and Norman Mailer. And some of it's fine, but some of it you're kind of going, right, we could do without all of this, But I have to say it was the book I enjoyed reading the most this year.
Okay.
Purely because, like, there's not enough of these,
original works.
Real, just kind of... just so enjoyable. It's such a big swing to take, and I loved it.
I've obviously got discomfort with Tyson, given his criminal history and what he did, but I do remember, and we were both probably kids when he was world champion, he was a killing machine. I mean, I'd love to have seen him against Peak Ali. It would have been...
Yeah.
There was a time when Tyson was just...
But, like, even the thing that you take, and I was sort of too young to care, really. Like, now, like, I cared about boxing a bit because I was from Monaghan and Barry McGuigan was world champion. And so that was my gateway into boxing. But, like, I wouldn't have been staying up to watch Mike Tyson or any of that, like, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. But I remember, like, Bone Crusher Smith and Trevor Berbick and what Tyson did to them. And that's the thing with it. Like, you see a mention of a fight in the book, and straight away you go to YouTube to try and find it. And you watch it, and the savagery of it, and it was just astonishing stuff. But it was, it was a mad, it's a mad story,
The Becker story, his book, well written now by Tom Fordyce, Inside. Like, when I was 6, Becker won Wimbledon. He was only 11 years older.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
So that's that in itself, only a child himself. So, like, more tennis titles would follow. Was there entitlement in Boris Becker's life that got him into this trouble?
Yeah, big time. Like, the best story of entitlement is that on his, I think, second or third day in Wandsworth prison, somebody tells him to make a cup of tea, and he actually doesn't know how to boil the kettle. Because he has never made coffee with a kettle. If he has ever not had coffee brought to him, it's because he has put an espresso pod into a coffee machine and knocked it out. So and like, he tells this story against himself. He doesn't know how to make a cup of coffee with a kettle. Yeah, look, entitlement. He made an awful lot of money and lost an awful lot of money. Bad investments, bad deals, bad advice from lawyers is what he sort of puts it down to. Yeah,
he hid £2.5 million worth of assets and was given a 2.5-year jail sentence under the UK's Insolvency Act. Served 8 months. I kind of felt from reading bits of it that prison, once you survive it, is quite boring.
To a certain extent. I came to this book in an interesting way. I listened to this book as an audiobook, and Becker himself does the audiobook.
Oh, okay.
And it gives it a different flavour, actually, than just reading the words on the page. Because you're right. Eventually it sort of settles into, taking off the days, the sort of the length of time you're there. How do you endure just the boredom of 23 hours in your cell, etc., etc. But as you listen to it, and especially, let's say, the first 3-4 weeks in Wandsworth, and then he gets moved to a place called Hautacam, which is for non-UK prisoners, so it's for foreigners. His first sort of week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in both those places, like, they're certainly not boring, because he is just, the body is reacting, the mind is reacting to a circumstance that he has no training for, no way of preparing for. Like, the book opens with him saying something along the lines of, it's the screaming that gets you on your first night in prison. And like, the atmosphere that builds up, the scene that he sets there, the fear, the genuine fear that he has in this completely abnormal situation for him. He kind of went to his trial, or to his sentencing, once he found out that once the judge handed down the guilty verdict. He still kind of thought that he was going to be going to a kind of white collar
holiday camp,
home on the weekends type affair. But he was sent to Wandsworth, like, and it was one of like, just a dangerous place, and didn't know who to trust, didn't know who not to trust, didn't know who to talk to, who not to talk to. So, like, from that point of view, it's funny, because I have read it as well. I have flicked through it like in black and white, but actually hearing him talk it is an interesting exercise and gives a better flavour of how he felt. I really, really enjoyed this book. I have to say, I was kind of astonished that, like, it didn't make like the William Hill long list or anything like that.
It is a crazy story. Like, Boris Becker in prison, it's mad.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because he's on BBC for years. He's coaching, he's in the Royal Box at Wimbledon.
And like, in the middle of it, Wimbledon happens that summer, and like, one of the first things, like, Sue Barker and John McEnroe and John Lloyd say on TV, and they all get in trouble with the BBC for it, is, "We miss Boris. Boris isn't here. Boris, if you're watching, we still love you." And like, Boris is at this point working in the gym in Hautacam, and to the younger the kids in prison who are like Lithuanian or Syrian or whoever, they have no idea who Boris Becker is. They know that he's the tennis guy. And then on TV, while the Wimbledon coverage is on, they give him a shout out, and he gets a new bit of respect all across the prison, to the point where he had coached Novak Djokovic for a couple of years beforehand. And so, look, the real hero of this book is Lillian, his partner, who's on the outside, who like supports him and loves him and all of this. Djokovic, Boris gets a message to Djokovic before Wimbledon, "Can you get tickets for Lillian?" And he says, "Absolutely. But if she comes to the first match and I win, she has to come to all the matches." So for all of Djokovic's matches, Lillian and Noah, Becker's son, his 21-year-old son, are sitting in the Royal Box, or in Djokovic's coaching box, because Djokovic has decided that they're his lucky charm, And so, again, like, Becker is watching this. He sees his son and his partner on the outside, and like, the little shithead kids in the prison are going, "Hey, that's your lady. Jesus, how did you get her?" This kind of stuff. And he gets again more newfound. And so it's a gas story that all the way through, what a picture. The prison totally gets on Djokovic's side all the way through Wimbledon. And he gets all the way to the final, and they're cheering for him all the way through it. It's like a scene out of Mobland. Yeah, exactly. Look, it's a mad. It's a really good book. I really, really enjoyed it. I kind of had sympathy for him. I kind of had no sympathy for him, you know, in a way. At the end, you know, he's trying to work out how to leave prison without the paparazzi coming
Well, the wedding
and getting him.
photos look nice.
The wedding photos look lovely, but also he gets out of prison and basically gets early release because he chooses deportment. So he chooses to get deported out of Britain to Germany, and so he gets a load of time knocked off. He's supposed to do 2.5 years. He only does 8 months, but as part of the deal, he flies to Germany. But in Germany, all the tabs have wind that Becker's getting released. He's going to be landing in Germany, and so they go to 5 different. Like they go to Frankfurt and Berlin and all these and Munich. So he's going to be landing here. Becker gets a mate his to lend him a private jet, and he flies to some provincial German airport, and that's how he escapes the tabs over in Germany. So you can have a certain level of sympathy for him, but at the same time you go, yeah, he's still living a different life to everybody else in the jail. But a great book. I really loved it.
Boris Becker inside Winning, Losing and Starting Again. This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. I've got to take a break for news, but when we come back with Malachy Clerkin, we'll go through some more of the sports books of the year. Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times. We're back after this. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 today. And this is part 2 of the Saturday panel. We are continuing our review of the sporting books of 2025 and teasing out some Christmas recommendations with one of the top sports writers in the country, Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times. My favourite book this year, Malachy, was The Last Ditch, Eamonn Sweeney.
Excellent, yeah.
And what I liked about this book was Eamonn Sweeney, as we know, writes for the Sunday Independent. On the back page, writes beautifully every week, and had a travel phobia. So he brought a book out, I think, over 20 years ago.
2003,
I think it was.
It was 2004. It was the 2003 season,
yeah,
The Road to Croker.
Yeah. So 20 years on, he overcomes a travel phobia to go and follow the championship of 2024. And for me, and I've had a bereavement this year, and when you have something like that happen to you, I suppose you're reminded of what being a human being is like. And when you see people in 3D and you see that everybody is living their own movie each day in a very unique fashion, and everybody has got their own texture and complexion to who they are as individuals. And what I loved about this was that Eamonn recaptured that connection with people. Getting on the train, going to Croke Park, talking to strangers, hearing conversations, interjecting, observing. It wasn't really about the Gaelic games. That was lovely because he writes lovely in a descriptive way about Tony Kelly or Cork or Armagh. But it was more about the different places he went to that he hadn't gone to for years, the different cultures he experienced, the different meals he had, and reconnecting his soul with humanity. I thought that's what really resonated for me months later.
Yeah, I really liked it. I have been saying for years and years to people, people ask me all the time, give me a book, not from this year, give me a different, what ones have I missed from years ago? And I always go back to The Road to Croker from 2004, Sweeney's first book, because there was just as ever, the simplest idea is I'll follow the championship around the place. The gas thing was partly about that book was that Sweeney didn't drive, and so it was like a travelogue around Ireland of getting the bus places and getting the train places and all of that sort of stuff. And there was a real fizz to it, a real energy to it, and I remember loving it. And I wrote this in my review at the time earlier this year that like my bookshelves get an annual cull, maybe a double annual cull to try and make some space. It is a book that has survived on my shelf for 20 years, and will for as long as I'm allowed. And so I was really looking forward to this book, and I liked it, because it's a different story. It's the same sort of structure, the same sort of idea, follow the championship around, but with the added sort of, what do screenwriters need? They need obstacles. They need, you need your protagonist to overcome things along the way. Like there might not be a more sort of breathtaking scene in any sports book this year than Sweeney standing on a railway station, a rural railway station in I think it's near Athenry, to make himself get on the train to Galway, because he hasn't been on a train in 20 years or however long it was. And so for him to make himself overcome all of this for a book, and for himself, you know, and the power of sport to be able to get him to do this, and his incredibly sort of honest and vulnerable way of discussing this and putting himself out there and not hiding from it, which would be the easy thing to do. It was brilliant, and the sport along the way, you know, injected fun into it, injected sort of structure into it. There's a great scene on a train to Thurles, I think it is, with the Cork fans, where a tip fan gets on a beardy guy, and just great, enjoyable stuff in it. But yeah, I really liked it. Like, it's a different book to the one from 20 years ago. Like, as you would imagine, you know, a man who's middle aged now, who was in his sort of early 30s then. Like, he probably has sort of less energy to be tramping around the country. Back then, he like went away up to Fermanagh and stuff like that. Whereas this is sort of mostly at the southern parts of the country. But yeah, I thought it was really good.
Rugby, we touched upon at the start of the conversation, Malachy. Brendan Fanning brings you behind the curtain, I feel, in sport writing with his first book on rugby a couple of years ago. What was it again, the name of it?
From There to Here.
Yeah, and this one is called Touching Distance. Picks it up in 2007 with the World Cup, then the failure in France, and brings it to the current day. It just gives you that insight that any rugby fan, you know, you got a dad or an uncle or you know, a sister or anybody who loves rugby. This is what happened, and that's it's just the inner workings of Irish rugby, but written in a accessible way, with lovely anecdotes and in a warm manner that doesn't make it boring.
Well, as you say, like, any rugby fan would be into this. I think it's a little broader than that as well, in that, you know, I think there's a huge swathe of the Irish sort of sporting population who, you know, didn't grow up with rugby, aren't from what we would term rugby areas, but who like watching the Ireland team, who like watching, when it's on free-to-air TV, the Champions Cup and the URC and all of that. But, you know, it's not... It's like they're doing sort of leaving cert French rather than being native speakers, you know, that they don't speak rugby. They don't, you know, the natural sort of rhythms of it and the personalities and where everybody comes from, how teams come together, how the provinces organise themselves, how the national team organises itself, all of that, and the superstructure around it all is a bit of a mystery to them. It's a bit of a foreign language. And I think this is a brilliant book for them as well. I think rugby, like real rugby people, will enjoy it on one level, and I think general sports fans will enjoy it on another level. Because, as you say, it's very accessible, but you can see that Brendan Fanning is a rugby guy. Like, he was the rugby correspondent of the Sunday Indo for however many years, the guts of 30 years, and before that with the Sunday Tribune. Like, he has been there all the way along, from the amateur days until the modern era. And, like, he is reliably sort of sarcastic as well. You know, a history of Irish rugby like this, or of the modern Irish rugby, could be kind of dry in the wrong hands. He's not dry, and he's got great interviews in it. You know, he has really in-depth interviews with David Nucifora and Joe Schmidt and, you know, Eddie O'Sullivan, people who have left the Irish scene now, but who were key components of it, all the way from 2007 to here. I love it. I think like every sport should be so lucky to have somebody do this, to leave a document of, you know, a time of enormous change, and to sort of go around everything. Like, all the provinces get a chapter here, the schools get a chapter, the national team gets a chapter, Joe Schmidt, all of this, and up as far as Andy Farrell. So, like, I think it's a really excellent and vital book, and like every sport would be lucky to have it.
I think document is a great way of putting it, and it's a hard thing to do, to have the street cred with the elite, and the people who would see themselves as, you know, rugby nerds, and then also to bring in the hurler in the ditch, who's the casual fan.
Very tough,
you know, and he did that. We have Kieran Murphy in with Owen Sheehan, as we spoke about this week, to talk about All Parish. There's also Mark O'Shea's autobiography with Adrian Russell, Micah Moynihan's More Than a Game. These are other GA books that have come out this year. What did you glean from them?
Yeah, like More Than a Game is not unlike Touching Distance. I kind of an MRI for the sport, you know, where it is now, how it got here, the various challenges it faces. Kieran Murphy's book is a kind of a delight. Like, there aren't very many books like it, where a guy takes a personal journey for himself. In this case, taking up hurling at the age of 41. People will know Kieran Murphy from, you know, laterally of this building, and for the last sort of 12, 13 years on second captains. You know, one of the sort of, and in the Irish Times, one of the sort of GA voices of the country, and yet he never hurled in his life. Much like me, I never hurled in my life, and I covered plenty of hurling.
That's 3 people now.
There you go.
I've never done that.
And so there's an examination of how does that happen? Like, why are people who are mad into GAA, who try to write about it and broadcast about it, who would say to themselves that they'd be able to explain it to an outsider, and yet, you know, we didn't grow up with hurling, with hurleys in our hands, and never did. And so there's a bit of an examination of that. There's also a bit of, like, there's really lovely sort of family stuff in it, because he goes back to the club of his dad in Waterford, and spends a summer down there with the junior hurling team. So look, it's a lovely, like, he's such a warm writer. His sort of self-deprecating kind of half haplessness, half earnest trying is, you know, it's a very agreeable time to spend with him. I really liked it. Mark O'Shea's book, like, he's the third of the O'Sheas to write a book. I would say if you were to rank the 3 of them, I think Tomas is probably the best, Mark's is probably the second best, and I can say this because Dara and I do his column on a Wednesday in the Irish Times. I say even Dara would say that Dara's would be third in that. So Mark O'Shea's is it's very enjoyable.
The Race by David Gillick and journalist Cathal Dennehy, detailing the highs and lows of an athlete's journey. Remember, David was a European indoor champion, went to Olympic Games. Sonia O'Sullivan, I've never been as happy to be corrected by somebody in my life. And Sonia O'Sullivan said to me, on the show, when you were speaking to me, you said former Olympian. You're never a former Olympian. You're always an Olympian. Sonia,
you aren't the only person Sonia has corrected.
So I was just thrilled. I mean, for such a legend to correct me, he said, Sonia, look, I'll take it on. Yeah. I'll never say that again. But David Gillick achieved a lot. Like, I mean, it's so hard as an international sport to do what he did. But then you see the challenges in his own mind with all of this journey, both during and then after athletics.
Yeah, and like, we were in here, it was last year, talking about Conor Nyland's book, the racket, the tennis book. This isn't unlike that. You know, Gillick got close enough to the big show to be able to, you know, to have the bona fides to be able to talk about it properly, and to understand that he got closer to it than 99.9% of the population, and yet he was as far away from it essentially as you and I are, you know. And the push and pull of that, the tension in that, how that messes with your head, is like, he's done it with Cathal Dennehy. He certainly had the right ghostwriter. Like, Cathal knows his athletics intimately and knows what makes athletes tick, And they've produced a really good book here, because, like Gillick, I knew Gillick a little bit around the time that he was competing, because I was with the Sunday Tribune and I was covering the Olympics around then, and I was covering the Olympics that he sort of describes as, probably his lowest moment, when he didn't get out of the heat in Beijing, even though he was world class level. He was aiming for the final there. He wasn't going to medal. He knew he wasn't going to medal, but he knew he could make it to the top 8. And but he didn't even make it out of his heat. He didn't even make it to the semi-final. And just the sort of the darkness of his mind through all of those years was completely unapparent to people like me, who would have spoken to him maybe 2-3 times a year and would have kind of kidded myself that I thought I knew him a bit, or thought I knew how. That was what I took away from it, was that we just don't know what is going on in sports people's heads. Like, in the course of a week, like, we talk about and write about hundreds of sports people, whether it's their teams or their competitions and all of that, and they get whatever 20 seconds on the news, and then you move on to the next thing. But inside their heads is this whole universe that we know nothing about, and yet we sort of pronounce upon them or judge them. So I found that the really sort of stunning thing here. Like, Gillick is really good about his early career, when he wasn't really seen as, potentially elite. Then the few years when he was really there among the elite and won European championships and was made world finals and all of this. And then his post-athletics life, when he tried to find an identity for himself, and found that incredibly difficult, until he sort of became what we know him now as the guy on the telly who interviews
the go-to
guy. The go-to
who's
guy.
able to it's so hard to do, to pull it off, right? Like, when an athlete, the last thing on earth they might want to do is talk to you. Yeah. Either through disappointment or whatever, or to capture euphoria. Yeah. And he's able to, because he's got the cred.
He has the cred.
And hard on himself, I would say.
Very hard on himself. But this is a great book. I couldn't recommend this highly enough.
And achieved a lot, David Gillick, and continues to do so. Football-wise, I've got Simon Cooper's book here, World Cup Fever. I mean, we got the World Cup obviously in the United States next year, folks. So I just love Simon's writing. Yeah. The anecdotes, the little stories. You could do one of these books and just do it. And Brian Glanville, who recently passed away, I mean, he was the doyen of this is what happened. Yes. But this is a different way of doing it now, and Jonathan Wilson's done a book as well on World Cups.
And I would tell people that the World Cup is 6 months away. Between now and then, read both this and Jonathan Wilson's The Power and the Glory. Two different ways of writing World Cup books, but equally enjoyable. Simon Cooper is one of what has to be a very small group of people who've been to every World Cup since 1990. Can there be more than a couple of hundred of those people on the planet at all? And so he has little recollections from each of them. And, what's interesting is that, of course, the World Cup changes through all of that, but he changes, of course, and he is a different person at the 98 World Cup than he is at the 2002 World Cup, than he is at the 2006, etc., and finds different things to write about in them. It's fantastic, and Jonathan Wilson's book is different sort of thing. It's a history book, it's a sort of socio-political book, but it's also a football book, of course, and it takes each World Cup and what the world was when those World Cups happened. Really good, both of them really good. You give yourself 6 months, get yourself in the mood for the World Cup.
Have you been to a World Cup? Have you done a World Cup?
I was in Germany in 2006. That was my one World Cup. Sure, look, if all things go well in March, we'll have chats about. I did notice when the fixtures came out that Ireland are playing Mexico in the Azteca Stadium 40 years and 2 days after Maradona's destruction of England in the same stadium
Wow.
in 1986, which is my sort of origin story, if I can give myself so lofty a term. Like, it was that, more than anything, that is what I remember about like sport. I was whatever, seven going on 8.
You wanted to run into the television.
I just like Maradona running rings around England. Was just, and so if you could, if we can organise it that I could be at that stadium 40 years almost to the day afterwards, I think
maybe Troy Parrott might be able to
I'll
help you
take
out.
that. Yeah.
We have the legendary Donald McRae, boxing writer. He's got a book called The Last Bet Out, and you got the recent William Hill Sports Book of the Year winner, The Escape, Pippa York and David Walsh. Do they appeal, these efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. Like McRae's book, like I'll always read a Don McRae book. I think he's up to 7 or 8 sports books, and they're some of my favourite sports books ever. This is a sort of a follow-up to Dark Trade, which is his boxing book from the mid-90s. It's one of the great boxing books. Like, this is a kind of a trope, this kind of boxing book, a kind of a journey into the dark heart of boxing, and boxing lends itself to this kind of thing, almost more so than almost any other sport, because there's that tension in boxing between what happens in the ring, which is some of the most courageous stuff that happens in any sport, you know, and everything that happens around it, some of which is the most ludicrous, corrupt, greed-ridden stuff that happens in any sport. And so there's that tension between, you know, this covers the period of time when the Kinahans were involved in boxing, when the Saudis were and are involved in boxing, and all the greed and corruption and, you know, rotten shit that surrounds this sport. And McRae writes about that like so straight and bracingly and like so on the nose, but then he kind of can't quit boxing at the same time. So he calls it The Last Bet. He says it's going to be his last boxing book, and it's made by the characters in it, you know, the sort of journeymen like Isaac Chamberlain and Patrick Day, all the way up to, you know, it finishes with Usyk against Fury, you know, in Saudi. And it's just a brilliant sort of snapshot of boxing and what it is to love a sport that you know is hateful and terrible. So there's a brilliant tension in it. The Escape by Pippa York and David Walsh won the William Hill. Like, there's no other book like this. Pippa York, people will know, used to be called Robert Miller. He was this nails hard cyclist in the 80s and 90s. This a Scottish cyclist known for just this, you know, one of those cyclists that could go through so much pain, could, like, his USP was suffering, and in a sport where suffering is the thing, to stand out as one of the great sufferers. He has since transitioned. He is now called Philippa York. David Walsh is, you know, people will know, legendary Irish sports journalist. Formed a relationship with him, covering a Tour de France. And so this is part sort of travelogue, part road trip through the Tour de France, part sort of assessment of the sport, part, you know, digging into the trans stuff, which is, you know, the sort of the kind of the third rail of international discourse now. Is the thing that, you know, you're supposed to try and stay away from to some extent, because people don't want to offend people, but they don't want to fall on the wrong side of it, and they surely don't want to talk about trans stuff in sport, because that's one of the really sort of territories that's fought over. And it takes some feat of writing to, you know, not even tiptoe, because he doesn't tiptoe through it all. He writes it because he just sticks to the story and tells Pippa York's story. And and it's over and back between the two of them. But obviously, David is himself in it, but he's also a ghostwriter in it. So it's a unique book. Like there hasn't been a book like this probably ever. Like, so there's no formula to it. But it's an incredible achievement. And sure, look, David Walsh has been doing this for 40, 45 years, and for him to be still winning awards like this is very, very admirable.
A lot of great sports books have been reviewing Malachy Clerkin from the Irish Times. We're chatting to here on Off the Ball Saturday. Anything we've missed from the year, Malachy?
Yeah, there's a few others around the place. I mentioned sort of Conor Murray's in passing earlier.
Tommy Connon.
With Tommy Connon, yeah, and very good. As I said, like these autobiographies can leave you cold a little bit. This wouldn't leave you cold, but the best stuff in it is like how Munster basically fell apart.
Cloud 9, it's called.
Cloud 9, yeah. Yeah, and Murray's like, he doesn't shy from it, you know. Like, he came into a dressing room with Rog and Paulie and all these heroes, and it was up to him and Peter O'Mahony and Keith Earls to carry it on, and it fell away. And he doesn't pull any punches in why he thinks it fell away and how it fell away, and how his sort of career fizzled out at Munster under Graham Rowntree, even as Andy Farrell still had him as his number one scrum half, you know. So all of that is very interesting and really well done. On the golf side of things, Chasing Ladybirds by Dermot Gilleese is, like, people who know Dermot Gilleese has been the sort of doyen of Irish golf writers for 50 years, I would say, at this stage. And this is his account of Irish golf's relationship with the Open, with the British Open. It's called Chasing Ladybirds, of course, because Pádraig Harrington's young fella wanted to put ladybirds in the claret jug when he won. And but it's more than just the guys that have won it, because obviously, you know, you have Harrington and McIlroy and Darren Clark and all the way back to Fred Daly. But it's the attempts to win it down the years, then the ones that came up short and all of that, and their relationship with the tournament itself. And, like, you know, no more than David Walsh. Like, Dermot is a fair age, let's put it that way, and he's still banging out these books. And yeah, this is very enjoyable as well. There's another golf one that I was slightly disappointed with, called Roryland, and it's an American writer who basically takes Rory McIlroy's story and, you know, tells it. It's for an American audience, and if you've followed Rory McIlroy's career, you sort of know most of it. But if you're a little bit patchy on McIlroy or whatever, it's all there. It takes him from, you know, Hollywood to winning the Masters. So it's decent. I'm sort of hoping for more out of it, though.
We're still waiting maybe for the Rory book, but maybe that's not possible given the way it's already all out there with Rory every week.
A little bit, yeah. I don't see any reason why Rory McIlroy would write a book. You know, there's no cash in, there's nothing for that. What I do know is that if he did, I think it couldn't but be great, because he's such a... If you got the right person to do it, he could tell a great story. Because even though he lays so much of himself out there, I think there's still so many hidden depths with him. So I don't know, but I can't imagine he'll ever write a book.
Anything for the coffee table?
Anything for the coffee
Season
table.
of Sundays, obviously.
Season of Sundays is always like, it's going nearly to go to 30 years. So it's kind of amazing. And it has David Clifford on the front of it this year, and he's sort of like Christ, kind of running away from... One of the great things I always say about David Clifford is that he celebrates his goals, which is a great thing, because so many GAA players don't. So many GAA players get back to their position. But it doesn't matter if it's the fourth goal in a 7-goal hammering. Clifford will still give it the old finger wag. And so the front of Season of Sundays is him kind of running airplane style after one of his many goals this year.
Ray McManus and Season of Sundays.
Yeah.
So we've done the flavour. We've got the inside. Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times has been amazing as always. Just You're in maybe once a year with us on Off the Ball Saturday, so I wouldn't mind asking you, what was the story of the year for you? We'd Rory McIlroy, the Masters. We had Troy Parrott's hat-trick in Budapest. We had Tipperary and Cork, the amazing second half of the All-Ireland final. The Camogie scandal, as it were. There's probably other things I can't even recall. Anything that stood out for you this year?
Like, I would obviously mention like Kate O'Connor taking a sport that didn't really exist here. You know, multi-events in athletics are just not a thing that we've no history of it. We have no Daley Thompson. We have no Tessa Sanderson or Fatima Whitbread. So, but now we have Kate O'Connor, and hopefully that sort of endures until LA, and she couldn't do it there. But like John, the story for me this year will always be McIlroy. Like, winning the Masters is just. I remember interviewing Rory in 2009 before he had won a tournament. He was this rising star, and everybody could see that he was going to do something. But I remember interviewing him in Hollywood Golf Club, in the bar in Hollywood Golf Club on a Tuesday morning one time. And he was so young, like he was, whatever he was even 21 at that stage, or maybe he was only 20 or 19 even. And I never forget that we were in the bar where obviously his dad famously worked, and we were there, and a guy came around and was cleaning the bar and was hoovering, and like got us to kind of lift our feet as he hoovered underneath us. And he was chatting away to Rory, and I was kind of looking at my watch going, I don't have too long here, buddy, you know, kind of get on with it there. And all he wanted to say to Rory was, listen, make sure you tell your dad I was asking for him. And so I always loved the fact that he's just somebody's kid, you know, and that to the people that he grew up around, he's just Jerry and Rosie's kid, you know. And for him to go as I say, he hadn't even won a tournament then. I think he won one about 3 months later. And for him to go from that to becoming the only European golfer ever to win the Grand Slam, the only Irish person ever to win the Masters, and for that journey to be such a roller coaster is totally overused, and I don't want to fall back on cliche, but it's so hard to get away from the fact that in his life he's hit such heights and such lows all the way along. And for him to go those 10 years after winning his British Open and no major, and the amount of nights that I've sat up watching him, those US Opens against Wyndham Clark and against Bryson DeChambeau, the Open in St Andrews against Cam Smith, for all of that to happen, for him to come so close so many times, and then to watch that final round, I have actually kept it. This is a very nerdy thing to do now, John, but I've actually kept it back for myself, that because at some stage over Christmas, I'm going to sit down for 3 hours and watch it back shot for shot as a little treat to myself, because I was live blogging that night for the Irish Times website. It's by far the biggest traffic for a live blog that we had throughout the year, and it changed so many times. His shot on the 7th over the trees, his shot on the 13th into the water, when he had it won. Like, he had played so conservatively on the 13th, he had left himself with this just simple chip up and down for your birdie, and if it's a par, you're still a couple clear. He had the bloody thing won, and then he put it in the water, and the getting it on and having to missing the putt and or going to the playoff and then stitching it to 2 feet in the playoff. It was just, I don't think there'll ever be another Irish sports story like it. And I think so much fed into it that it's my moment of the year. But when we come to do all of this in December 2029, it'll be my moment of the decade. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in Irish sport.
Well said. It was a movie.
Yeah. It's a. I don't know about movie. Like,
You
you know that OJ
see,
documentary that they needed to make it 8 episodes long, and it won Best Documentary at the Oscars, but like it's kind of like a Ken Burns type thing. I think that's what it is. Like a movie. I don't know how you'd put all of this in 2.5 hours.
How long was it? It's probably it's probably like Das Boat or something.
Das
One of those-
Boat, yeah,
one of those
exactly.
long-
Yeah,
long
there's one
movies.
for the kids. Yeah, Das Boat.
But it was because I think Hollywood's gone apart, and I think golf like that. And we mentioned some of the final rounds, even the U.S. Open with DeChambeau and McIlroy. It's better than it is. Literally is something you go to watch to the cinema, take out the popcorn, and be enthralled.
Totally enthralled, and
you'd be jumping around that. You'd be on the floor. You'd be off your couch. You'd be hands over your eyes, and then you'd be in as much euphoria. We're just taken on that magical carpet ride.
On that Sunday night when he holed the putt, I was there on the couch typing away furiously, and my wife was beside me, and we were both in tears.
There you go.
So, like, what more do you want out of sport?
Malachy Clerkin, been an absolute pleasure. Happy Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for coming in.
Cheers.
We're back after this.